Now let's talk about virtualization in the data center. As you might imagine, we're mostly talking about type 1 hypervisors here. Um, our goal here is to improve performance, improve ease management, improve reliability, reduce our hardware and power costs, improve and enable server clustering, load balancing, provide better fault tolerance, um, and we give ourselves the ability to create specialized servers that runs different services. Now, one of the things that we want to solve here is the concept of server sprawl. So server sprawl, if you can imagine, let's see, like, say for example, you have, now this is a sort of rack you might find in a very small data center. Um, a data center that's more or less built out of server grade tower systems. Um, a data center which is very, very densely populated would all be dealing with rack-mounted devices, specialized architecture, literally physical specialized architecture, hot aisles, cold aisles, etc. The sort of things you would talk about um, in the physical and environmental security section of a Security Plus focused course. In any case, we've got these 4 servers. They've all got a NIC. They're all tied into a hub. Though actually, if you're tying in, if you're building a data center with hubs, you've already done something wrong. You should at the very least have really good switches, if not a much more complicated setup. But the thing is about these servers is that most of the time they're not doing a whole lot. So you've got 4 servers all sitting idle, um, all costing you power, costing you the extra power to pull the heat away, all losing a little bit of their value to the company every single day in terms of accounting. This is a process we call amortization. Um, it is not a good use of resources for all these things to be idle a significant fraction of the time. Instead, and of course, if you're locked into this notion that every server needs a physical machine, every time you need to add a new function, you have to add a new server, rethink the layout, maybe rerun wires, etc., etc., etc. On the other hand, if you virtualize, if you take these 4 functions, your corporate, your accounting, your marketing, and your web, and you rearrange them, like this, say for example, you virtualize them. So virtually inside the host computer, you've got 4 servers running, 4 different VMs providing the functions of your email, your web, your marketing, and your corporate file server. All of that tied into one NIC, one chassis, 1 port on the hub. Now, this is not the sort of thing you would want to do with anything less than a very good workstation system. Really and truly, if you're going to virtualize like this, what you would want to do is to put all 4 of those functions on one server, or maybe split it. You have one that's doing your marketing and your web, one that's doing your email and your corporate, or maybe your email and your web together if you're very careful about securing them. And then because you've got 4 servers but 2 idle chassis, you can replicate. You can make a working backup of both of those, and now you've got fault tolerance, load balancing, etc. Now let's talk about the requirements. Now the first thing I'm going to say here is these requirements are wildly unrealistic. Okay, particularly in terms of your RAM and your disk. If you're going to need 4 gigs of disk space just to install the thing. You need 4 gigs of RAM just to run it. If that's all you've got in that system, if all you have is 4 spare gigs of RAM on your server that you're planning to run vSphere on, don't even try it. You need to spend your money first on upgrading your hardware. By the same token, running any form of modern Windows with less than 2 gigs of RAM is not a good idea. I demonstrated this for myself a bit unintentionally the other day. I was trying to test some labs, and I had, this is before I had upgraded my system from 16 to 32 gigs of RAM. And in order to say to, in theory, save myself a little bit of space so I could run more VMs, I dialed a Windows 10 box back to down to 1 gig. And let me tell you, it does not run well. Uh, Windows 10 needs, at a bare minimum, 2 gigs, ideally 4. In fact, Windows 7 64-bit needs at least 4 gigs of RAM. So the thing you should do whenever, particularly when you look at Microsoft's hardware requirements, take a look at those, double everything. If it says you need 4 gigs of RAM, you need 8. If it says you need 8 gigs of RAM, you need 16. Um, if it's if it says you need 50, if it needs 5 gigs of free space, give it at least 10. So this is the place where you do not cut corners. It is an extremely bad idea um, to try to save yourself a little money here, because what you buy yourself by saving that money is a whole lot of pain and frustration later. Um, there's a British colloquialism, penny wise and pound foolish. Has nothing to do with murder clowns. Um, someone who is penny wise and pound foolish is counting their pennies, but not thinking in terms of the pounds they'll spend down the line by not spending them now. So don't be penny wise and pound foolish. Buy as much hardware as you can, every time you can, and everything will work a lot better. The next thing we're going to talk about is virtual desktop infrastructure, which is kind of a bridge between workstation and data center virtualization, and will get us actually into get us talking about cloud virtualization. So I'll be right back.